few decades ago, it was the case that if your car had a problem, you could buy a Haynes manual and you can go to AutoZone, get the parts, and pretty much fix anything. Anymore, you have to find a professional because things have gotten complicated. And lay people cannot fix their cars anymore. Lay people have a hard time fixing their computers, even having a hard time doing our taxes, much less raising kids to be faithful disciples of Jesus. We've fallen into the same philosophical, cultural mindset of a professionalized world where professionals do professional things, where important matters are addressed by professionals who are degreed, who are accredited, who have the credentials. 3 to 5 years plus a master's plus married. That has not worked out very well because the truth of the matter is there are only a few people who can fit that category, but the need for the people to do the work is actually far greater than the number of people we're able to train to do the work, because training people to do the work takes people who feel called to do it, who take out student loans to do it, who have to go through 8 years of college to get a master's of divinity to do this kind of work. And so all of a sudden we have this real professionalized view. Flash back to the Gospels. Flash back to Matthew chapter 4, 19 through 22, the calling of the first disciples. Jesus is calling fishermen to come and do evangelistic work. He's calling fishermen to come and do discipling work, to come and be disciples who make disciples. And Jesus is the one who makes them who they are, to help empower them to do the things he's calling them to do. I'm not downplaying the need for university work, for academic work, for degree professionals. I'm not downplaying that. I'm just saying that we have relied far too heavily on too few of people, so that the amount of work and discipleship that needs to take place is severely lacking, when in all reality, the qualified people are actually all around. We have just not utilized them. We have not identified them. And in fact, it starts in the home. It starts with mom and dad, or mom or dad, or grandma or grandpa, or aunt or uncle, or whoever is raising this child. This is where faith development has always started, going back to Deuteronomy chapter 6. The Shema, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. He says these commandments are to be upon your heart. You're pass them down upon your children, to be when you sit, walk, and stand, go along the road, and all these sorts of things. It was an in-home faith development program that was life on life, organic, parents to children. And all of a sudden we've said, instead of 2 parents on 1 child, 2 parents on 2 children, 2 parents on 3 or 4, we've said 1 paid professional to take care of, to disciple, to raise in faith 50 kids, 60 kids, 70 kids. The math doesn't work out. And the proof of the pudding is the result. The result has shown that that methodology doesn't pan out. That faith development doesn't take place well through that approach. Now, I'm not saying go fire your youth minister. I'm saying that we need to retool. We need to refocus. You say, well, this biblical church, well, then go do biblical things. It's called parents raising their children in faith. Instead, we've adopted a drop-off professionalized mentality. So instead of reproducing faith and discipleship, within the home, we've taken the family responsibility and we've taken it and placed it upon the shoulders of the church. Often youth ministers who don't even have teenagers. They're young. So they don't have teens. They may not even have kids yet. Doesn't mean they're not qualified. It just means that we've misplaced much of what it means to be a disciple maker from within the context that God designed it, ideally, which is the home. Our ministry shifts, and we begin to look at how then do we use our resources to equip parents to raise faithful disciples within the home, to walk alongside your kids and show them the way of Jesus. That when you as a parent make a decision, you show your children what Christ-like people making a decision looks like. That when you enter into hard relationships or hard conversations, you are very diligent to show your children these are the kind of things we consider. These are the kind of things we're going to say. This is the way it's going to look. So that whenever it comes time for them to make decisions, you're able just to say, well, not just go do this or go do that. Here's what making a Christ-like decision looks like. Here's how choosing godly friends works. Here are the kind of people you are to be on the lookout for. A youth minister cannot do that because a youth minister is not in your home 7 days a week. At best, a teen is getting 4 to 8 hours a week around a youth minister, around a youth ministry. I hope that a child is getting far more than that in the home. And so we have a real problem because the amount of time and effort and money it takes to qualify a very small number of people who feel called to do this will not meet the need of all the children within a congregation, much less all the children within a community. It must go back to the parents. It must go back to those who are raising the children. This is the way that God had always envisioned it, but we chose a different route. Let's put it on our own shoulders. We chose this route. Up until the 1980s, this wasn't even a thing, but now all of a sudden it's a thing. Why is it a thing? We got to dive into this for a moment. Like, why did this even become a thing? And I have a hypothesis, cannot necessarily prove it, but it seems to me that we became consumer driven. And now all of a sudden we have goods and services that must appeal to a mass consumer audience. And so if we want people to be attracted, the attractional model, attracted to our congregation, then we need goods and services that are better than the other congregation. We have a better, more vibrant youth ministry that's doing more fun things and, going out and doing more service projects, whatever, than the next youth group. And so, we're the killer youth group to come to this one. This is the cool one to be a part of. And that may have little to do with faith development. Even if it has a lot to do with faith development, it may not actually be being done effectively because, again, you have one person's attention split 65 ways over a very short period of time during the week. It's just not going to work. We have to take ownership of the philosophies and approaches that we have adopted, and then we have to take inventory to say, did that work or did that not work? If that worked, let's keep doing it. But if it didn't work, why do we keep doing it the way we've done it? Can we not take those times, those resources, those people, and invest it into other approaches that might produce more fruit? Because the approach that we've adopted, and it's now been tested for over 40 years, is not working the way that we envisioned it to work. I hope this does not seem like a guilt trip to parents. We as parents of an 11 and a 13-year-old, we don't do this perfectly with 100% consistency. There are nights that we realize it's bedtime and we've not spent time in the Word with our kids. We've not spent time in prayer with our kids. That's going to happen. And that's an important part of discipleship, is to be in the Word, to help them understand the Word, to ask them questions, to ask what stands out and why, and to then ask, how do we live this and what does this look like and what can we do tomorrow to embody what we've learned? Very important that we as parents become tool to walk through life with our children, to raise them in faith, just as we talked in the last video about being in Deuteronomy and being in the Psalms and being in the New Testament, being in the pastorals. This is the way that God has done it from the beginning, and we took another route. Can we not be very clear? We took another route than God's route. This is not the way that God had set this thing up. And all of a sudden we've made a faux system. Let me even dive in a little bit deeper. Because in the Bible, faith is developed in a faith family community where, yes, bio mom and bio dad or whoever's raising this child has a responsibility to raise them in faith, yes, 100%. But we've actually created a whole nother layer, a whole nother level to the system, a whole nother level to the process where we actually, if you see the church as a family unit, the youth minister, from an organizational perspective, often, not every church, often is not even part of the family. They're a hire. They're a hire who's put into the organization to perform a specific function and to get paid as a vocation to fulfill a specific function that may or may not actually produce faith in children. Probably far often it does not produce the kind of faith that we need because we see too many falling off on the back end at age 18. But what I'm saying is that yes, even in the New Testament, there was a faith community component to raising your children in faith, whereas even today, the person who we put over the faith of our children, the youth minister, because they got a degree and they went to school and they know this better than I do, they are often seen as a hire. They are often seen as a cog in the wheel. They are not often even seen as part of the family. They're to be hired and fired at will, without cause, without explanation. We don't have family members that we hire and fire. I don't invest people into the lives of my children who we just hire and fire, and one day they're here and one day they're not. Do you wonder why our children are falling away from church when the very person who we've put in charge of their faith development is considered a hire who can be let go at will, and they often receive no explanation, and now their youth minister is gone and they don't really have any idea why? It's because they were never part of the family. We don't just have in a family, we don't just have family members just wander off and leave and no one ever explained to the kids where Uncle Charlie went. Eventually you figure this out. Eventually it's talked about, it's shared, because it's family. And so not only do we have a professionalization in ministry, we have another layer removed where the professional is not even part of the family. It's not like it's your uncle who's a lawyer who's helping you with a legal matter. It's like that lawyer can just be hired or fired, but is in charge of the most sensitive aspects of your life. You don't just want to let a person like that go. You say, here's the youth minister. Teens, this person is in charge of developing the most important area of your life. We want you to form tight relationships with this person. We want you to spend as much time with them as possible. We want you to follow their lead. But hey, by the way, we're not going to tell you this, but in a moment's notice, without any input or consideration from you, we can remove them and just throw some other random person in the mix, willy-nilly, whether you like it or not. So now I have a good, trusting, growing, faith-building relationship. We'll see how it goes. Well, it hasn't gone very well. And so we need to be using our church family to raise young people to be part of a family. This is how families operate. Church is like a family. Church is not a business. So it's a soapbox for me. I'm trying to raise our kids in faith. We are in a house church. We have no youth group. It can be a challenge because I will say youth groups can be phenomenal for social peer interactions for Christian youth who need to hang out with people of the same age who have a similar belief system. That is a wonderful supplement and support to what we are doing in the home. It is not our strategy. Youth group is not our strategy. That's not the way we're going to raise our kids to have a resilient faith. Studies have shown that what children need to have a resilient faith through Barna, through Awana, and through others is that they need one single solitary adult outside bio family who takes an interest in them, walks alongside them, who they know is in their corner. We used to say 4, 5, 6 adult relationship. Blah, blah. It's one. It's just one. And if you make it the youth minister who can be hired and fired willy-nilly without any explanation and rip the Band-Aid off of trust with the youth group toward the elders and this sort of thing, that's not going to work very well. That can't be your one person because the one person can't be contingent upon a paycheck and a job description. This is someone who truly takes a genuine interest. Maybe instead of having just putting all this into youth ministry, we need to put all this into forming meaningful adult interactions within the church family and congregation and resourcing the parents to train their own children in faith. So, before I was in ministry, y'all know I was in psychology. I was at the University of Florida. We were training parents in parent training for children who had severe behavior problems. And, we were training the parents to become the play therapists for their children. We trained them in specific skills. They executed on the skills in front of us with a one-way mirror, bug in the ear, and we would coach them. And they would go home and they would practice the skills at home. We would give them exercises to do. We would give them handouts to do. We would train them verbally. We would give them written literature. They would go home and try it. They would come back. We would talk about it. We need to train our parents in the faith development of their own children. And if parents are not interested in the faith development of their own children, then I don't know what to tell you, but I think they are because they send their kid to church with the unwritten promise that it's going to happen as long as they attend church because that's our metric of faithfulness. And this brings us around to even what are our metrics of faithfulness. Church attendance is not a metric of faithfulness. It just isn't. And so we need a better measuring stick of what discipleship looks like within the life of a human being and a teen in particular. And we need to begin working with our parents and as parents together to partner in the faith development of our children. This is the way forward, and you just got to find an approach. Look at Awana. They do amazing work. That would be the place that I would start if I were you. There's lots of resources online. There's conferences you can go to, but these are your kids. If you're a parent, these are your kids. You want to see them grow up in faith. And now what Awana is saying is, and others have said, we used to think it was like, you need to have them by 18. You need to have a solid faith by 18. Anymore, it's more like age 8 to 11. If solid faith is not embedded into our teens, into our youth by the age of 8 to 11, you're on the tail end of your window of opportunity. It doesn't mean anyone after 11 is just a lost cause. I'm not saying that. We're just saying that that's the window. That's the opportunity. Anything 11 and prior, you still have plenty of time to work on them if they haven't gotten it yet, that you can still have the influence and get these things worked out. We work under a lot of misnomers that, oh, we have until 18, no, it's too late. Oh, the youth minister will do it, it's too late. If we just get them into church, it's not enough. So let's get serious about the discipleship of our own children. And this is not a guilt trip. I mean, if you're watching this like, oh, I try to raise my kids in faith and I took them to church all the time. We did Bible studies in our home and now they're out in the world and they don't care about Jesus. That's going to happen. People are going to make their own decisions. You can do everything with the utmost of intentionality and it not work out. But we got to try. And if something's not working, then let's not keep doing it the way we were doing it. And we can keep those youth ministers and we can keep those things in place, but just retool them into equipping functions to equip the people who are best positioned to disciple the children. And that's the people who are in the home with the children because they're there with them 7 days a week, in the mornings and in the evenings and having meals and on the weekends. Kids are watching their parents, and if their parents are not living how the youth minister is teaching, the parents are going to win every time. But if the parents can live their faith out, even in failure, kids are going to pick up on that. I encourage you, if you're a parent, I pray for you. Please pray for me that we can raise our kids in faith and that we can see a vibrant next generation. Because I'm telling you, this is the prime opportunity because this next generation is on fire for something significant. But we have not always shown them that Christianity, following Jesus, is very significant because it hasn't been significant to us. So why would they think it was significant? They wouldn't. So appreciate you putting up with my rant. If this has been helpful to you, hit that like button and let YouTube know to show this to more folks, and we'll catch you soon.